Angels and Demons, Physiological and Psychological Vivisection in the World of SyFy's Dominion. In his essay, The Power of Names, Lauren Graham argues that forcing a name, quote, upon something or someone is seen as the exertion of dominion over that thing or person, unquote. There are many instances in recent popular culture in which the villain is designated as such through the use of pejoratives that define the enemy as non-human, and hence lesser than ourselves. A classic example is the zombie. Clearly it was once human, and to some extent retains its outward humanoid appearance. This resemblance can make it difficult to recognize the zombie as the threat that it is and exterminate it. In The Walking Dead, those who are regularly forced to destroy the undead refer to them as walkers, lurkers, or biters. Zombies are reduced to their generic actions rather than the individual personalities that once defined them when they were alive. Another way that groups and individuals can be dehumanized through naming is to refer to them as objects, and in the process strip them of both their human and gender identities. For example, The Walking Dead's Milton Mamet explains to Michonne and Andrea that he refers to zombies as, quote, it, only because no one here likes to refer to him or her. But it is not just the undead who are robbed of their humanity through the use of objectifying terminology. The case in point described here is the SyFy original post-apocalypse series Dominion, which ran for 2 seasons, 22 episodes, in 2014-15. The Archangel Gabriel and his host of incorporeal lower angels declared war on humanity more than 25 years before the start of the series, and the vast majority of humans were either killed or their bodies permanently possessed by lower angels, depicted as a form of parasitic disease in which some of the human memory remains, but free will has been completely lost. The human forces under the leadership of General Edward Ryson temporarily defeated Gabriel's army, and with the aid of the Archangel Michael, fortified a largely untouched section of the Las Vegas Strip to form the city-state of Vega. Possessed humans continue to kill regular humans whenever they can. Also of concern to human settlements are the remaining archangels, as well as other higher angels who, like archangels, possess their own corporeal bodies and whose whereabouts and allegiances are largely unknown. All of these higher angels can pass for human unless they unfurl their wings or commit acts of great strength, and many pretend to be humans within Vega. The reason for the war is the sudden disappearance of God, and apparently heaven with him. The lower angels are driven to take on human bodies because they have nowhere else to go, other than the nothingness. The reasons for God's mysterious departure are unclear, but are assumed by the angels to center around his disappointment at either humanity's inhumanity towards each other and/or humanity's destruction of the natural world. Hope for the return of God centers around the so-called Chosen One, a human, revealed to be Vega soldier Alex Lannon, saved as an infant by Michael. Both Gabriel's war on humans and Michael's protection of the infant are present in the series source material, the 2010 film Legion, but much of the series mythology either departs from or significantly extends that of the film. There are a number of physical changes that are induced in the host body when it is possessed by a lower angel, allowing for their easy identification, including the blackening of the irises of the eyeballs. This vivid transformation is referenced in the disparaging name by which these beings are referred, 8 balls, in allusion to the black 8 ball in billiards. The unequivocal derogatory nature of this term is made clear in the episode Black Eyes Blue, when the Archangel Michael rebukes a plea for mercy from one of these beings. His reply, "You're an 8 ball," makes it clear that such a being is not deserving of mercy in his eyes. When the lower angel protests, "Don't call me that," Michael coldly retorts, "It's what you are and always will be." But unknown to all, General Ryson carries out a decades-long affair outside the Vegas city walls with his 8-ball possessed wife, setting her up in a comfortable and discreet suite in the remains of the Luxor Hotel. Edward chooses to see her as his beloved spouse, despite the fact that she does not age and bears the obvious signs of angelic possession. Interestingly, Ricin has no difficulty ordering the deaths of other 8-balls, while treating Clementine with tenderness and love because he makes a distinction between them and her. She is special. When Clementine disobeys her husband's direct order to remain outside the walls of Vega, the first soldier to find her is Alex. "There it is," he reports, as he begins to chase Clementine. Note the use of the objectifying pronoun it in relation to Alex's target. She has no name to him. She needs no name. She is merely a thing to be hunted down and disposed of. But once she is cornered by Alex, she appeals to his humanity by attempting to establish her own humanity. She begs him not to kill her because she has a daughter. Clementine is spared because she convinces Alex that she is the mother of Alex's beloved, Claire, by revealing information that only a mother could possibly know. When Claire is reunited with Clementine, she is initially horrified, seeing not her mother, but the creature who stole my mother from me. She cannot understand how her father could love this thing and have a romantic relationship with her. "How could he do something so disgusting?" she asks Alex. He insightfully answers, "Because he doesn't see her that way. He still sees your mother." In his role as chosen one, Alex decides to attempt an eviction, a forcible removal or exorcism of the angel from the human body, despite the fact that it has never been successfully done. Importantly, the subject of this experiment has not given her consent to be experimented upon, an all too common outcome of the objectification of others in modern human history. Alex's experiment on Clementine falls under the loaded term of vivisection. Historically, the term literally meant cutting into a live organism, animal or human. In this sense, any operation is vivisection. By the late 19th century, it was used to describe any experiment done on animals or humans, whether the body was cut into or not. However, according to Susan Lederer, the term vivisection, human vivisection, was reserved specifically for, quote, "only those experiments on human beings undertaken not to benefit an individual subject, but to provide medical information," unquote. In current literature, the term is often used as a synonym for the conduct of illegal or unethical experimentation on unwilling human subjects. But the definition of human is conveniently fluid in the minds of those who would perpetrate such horrors, perhaps most famously the Nazis. Among their horrific actions were the barbaric experiments perpetrated by Nazi scientists on concentration camp victims. These included the intentional infliction of gangrene and mustard gas wounds, inflicting victims with malaria and typhus, and Joseph Mengele's infamous experiments on twins. As horrific as these were, they were unfortunately not isolated cases in the 20th century. For example, from 1937 to 1945, Japan's Unit 731 studied the effects of plague and other diseases on the human body through experiments done on Chinese victims, without anesthesia or remorse. As Mark Felton explains, in Japan's Gestapo, organs and parts of organs were removed from conscious patients, including infants, who, quote, lay screaming for their mothers, their short lives abruptly terminated by doctors who viewed these little children as nothing more than live flesh to play with, unquote. Nor was the United States above conducting human experiments without the informed consent of the participants, including the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, a 40-year study conducted by scientists associated with the U.S. Public Health Service on the effects of syphilis on over 400 African-American men in Alabama who were not even told they had the disease. The disease was allowed to ravage their bodies under the watchful eyes of the scientists, even after the discovery that penicillin would cure them. The idea that scientists would treat fellow human beings in such an inhumane way is hard to wrap one's mind around. Psychological studies have shown that in order to act in such a manner, the scientist views the victim as being a subhuman animal or even an object, literally as a thing. For example, researchers in Unit 731 not only viewed the Chinese prisoners as intrinsically inferior to Japanese citizens, but referred to the Chinese prisoners as, quote, research material, monkeys, or even logs, unquote. Similarly, Nazi scientists viewed their victims, Jews, Roma, homosexuals, and other marginalized and oppressed groups, as less than human. While Alex feels justified in conducting an eviction on the body that formerly belonged to Clementine Ryson, he has neither asked for nor received the permission of the being who directly stands to suffer through being cast out, the angel who is currently in possession of that human form. Not only does this being not have a say, she or he also lacks a name. Without a name, she or he lacks personhood and by extension lacks rights. For the sake of discussion, we will refer to him, her as AIC for Angel Inside Clementine. AIC has no definable status, having been named a creature by Claire, an 8-ball by Michael, and something to be evicted by Alex. AIC is not asked whether or not he is willing to depart, but is instead forcibly cast out. The ceremony is successful in removing AIC from Clementine's body, but the resulting being is nothing more than a comatose shell, straining to breathe. It is barely alive. Michael explains that Claire's mother's spirit is gone. That is all that will ever be left. As Claire smothers the shell that is now her mother's body, ending her physical suffering, we are left to ponder the suffering of both AIC and Clementine. Despite the fact that Alex's first experiment has deadly consequences, he presses on, with Michael rounding up 8 balls as expendable lab rats for Alex's use. When discussing various subjects, Alex refers to each simply by the state that issued their human host driver's license, such as Nevada or Florida. This is quite telling, because since he has the individual's ID, by default he must know their name. This objectification is his way of dealing with the failure of his experiments. In one case, he was able to bring the human consciousness back to the surface for 5 minutes, only to have the body go into convulsions and die, while another subject snapped her own neck before the process could be completed. Alex justifies what can be viewed as the intentional torture of lower angels as an attempt to save human lives. In his mind, the potential end justifies the means. But didn't the scientists of the Tuskegee experiment similarly justify their actions? While the case described here is purely fictional, of course, it clearly illustrates the ethical problems with such wartime experimentation. In a single case, we actually learn the name of the being who is being experimented upon, DIRGE, but Alex immediately rejects this attempt to grant the status of personhood to the lower angel, instead referring to him by the name of the physical form he inhabits, Jonathan Reese. When he realizes that he cannot evict DIRGE from this body, Alex treats the angel like a lab rat who has outlived his time in the experimental protocol, and shoots him in the head after the following exchange. Alex, sorry. DIRGE, oh, are you? Alex, wasn't talking to you, DIRGE. While it is certainly possible to argue that DIRGE has less right to the body than its original inhabitant, in that moment he appears to be the sole occupant. He is a sentient being and arguably deserves to at least be acknowledged as such. A gruesome physical vivisection is performed on the neutral higher angel Lewis in the rightly named Season 1 finale, Beware Those Closest to You. After being temporarily possessed by the Archangel Gabriel, Lewis is both physically and mentally weak and vulnerable, and as the Vega Constitution plainly states that angels, like Jews in Nazi Germany, have no rights, it is not safe to leave him alone to heal. His friend, the Archangel Michael, instead entrusts Lewis's care to Vega Senator and scientist BECCA THORNE, Michael's longtime human lover. Instead, BECCA performs painful experiments worthy of Frankenstein on Lewis in her subterranean laboratory, including investigating the effects of electric shock on angels, slicing his chest open, and examining his organs, and, in the greatest injury of all, cutting off his wings. When Michael and Alex find Lewis in the laboratory, the maimed angel begs to be put out of his misery, explaining, "Michael, look at me, look what's left of me, as my friend, please, please, please." BECCA has the unfortunate timing to enter the lab right after the Mercy killing, and feels the full brunt of Michael's supernatural fury. BECCA justifies her actions as part of her need to keep Vega safe. When Michael suggests that she was just using him to spy on other angels, BECCA tries to explain it's complicated and that her feelings for him were real. She offers in her defense that, quote, protecting the people of this city is more important to me than anything, and I'm sorry if you can't understand that, unquote. Not only does Michael fail to understand, he begins to strangle his lover, and when she protests, "I was protecting us," he snaps her neck in one angry motion. Who was the us of BECCA's seemingly sincere, if insufficient, explanation? Was she speaking of humanity at large, or specifically of Vega? Michael had not only been her lover for many years, but had played an integral part in the founding of Vega and the continued protection of the city. But in the end, he was just another other, a thing, deserving no rights, no permanent status, no loyalty. He was, in a word, non-human. The sad fate of Lewis serves as a reminder of the horrors that humanity can perpetrate on the innocent, on anyone, in the name of nationalism, security, and yes, I am loath to admit, the name of science. It is a disturbing message, dredging up some of the worst atrocities of history, but one that is vitally important that we, as a culture, never forget.